Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Well, good day. could potentially be morning for you. It could be evening. I am joined again this week with Bob Jarrett from CEO of Hatchway Trade Group. Thanks again for joining us today, Bob.
Good day, and you're welcome. So, happy to be here. It's becoming a regular thing in there. I think we just went live on LinkedIn.
Yes. I am joined again this week with Bob Jarrett. Oh,
So,
Bob, I think we have some feedback.
so should be fixed.
All right, cool beans. Let's rock and roll. So today we're going to be talking about starting a trucking company. Um, so, admittedly, Bob, you reached out to me over the weekend with some topics that you wanted to cover, and this was one of them that was on the list, and I felt like it was perfectly aligned because I think it's very common in our industry for people who don't know about it or how to enter. They are measuring it by the ups and downs and trying to figure out like jumping rope. Should they jump in now while it's down? Should they wait until it's up? But the thing about our industry is that so often we're going to experience these ups and downs. And so in the course of my 9 years, I've seen the highs of the highs with the pandemic, and I've seen the lows of the lows. And I've seen everything in between pretty much, and professionals like yourself who have been in the industry upwards of 30 years can speak to pretty much historical behavior along the same patterns, I should say. So when I'm asked this question on a regular basis, like, should I wait for the market to go up? Should I get in now? How do I get in now? Where do I start? I'm like, Bob is the guy to have this conversation with. um
I is there look for most of us the ups and downs of the markets and whatnot aren't. We try not to let these things affect our lives, and I got to say that both you and I, and if anybody thinks 2024 is not the greatest year to be starting companies or whatnot, but both you and I, as well as my accounting firm, Strawn Business Solutions, all started this year. All three of us, it, and then we're all working on HTG. It's I don't know. You can never say there's a right time to start. So the right time is whatever the time is right for the person. So if they have the right amount of money in the bank to start a business, and by that I mean you need to have your startup funds to buy any equipment or finance any equipment that you might need. And I think this would apply to more than just trucking.
yes.
You also need to have your plan put together that's going to take you to a point. And by that I mean you need to have a plan to when you become profitable, and or your plan to do that, because uh, that time period, whether it's 3 months, 6 months, a year, you need to be able to live personally at the same time. So not only do you need money to start up the business, you also need money to live on. So when you're talking about that, how much money you need to consider both those things: the money to start and operate the business, and the money to live at that point in time, or whatever it takes to become profitable. So, in trucking, so to speak, if you're a single truck owner operator doing a startup, whether you're doing it from an independent contractor status or an owner operator with your own DOT or motor carrier authority, the difference between that would be, as an independent contractor, you sign on to another carrier that has all the DOT operating authority, safety, compliance, all that back end stuff, and you focus on operating the truck and taking loads. Then the other side would be with your own authority, where you're going out, you're providing all your own insurances, your auto liability, your GL, your cargo, and you're registered with DOT, or Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. And with that, then you have requirements that you have to go by in order to be able to do that. What that does, though, is with that authority, it allows you to go direct to the consumer and be a for hire carrier. So decisions that have to be made along the way. The first being, do you have the money in the bank to be able to do this?
Now,
So
before
go
we
ahead.
get into that too much, so one situation that came up specifically, and I wanted to talk to you about this because I feel like maybe you could help me articulate it. Or so the person that I was speaking with, what they wanted to do is buy their first truck, but they wouldn't be the person that's driving it. And so they do have full-time work in place to support themselves while they're doing this. But I feel like a couple of things for people who might want to go that route, things for them to consider are, oh, and this person also said they want to take Amazon loads to do that. And that's when I was like, no, we got to have this talk because, so first and foremost, um, what do you think in this climate is a good margin for a trucking company with one truck to operate? Like, what do you think is solid? If you had one truck on the road right now and you were operating it, what do you think is a solid margin?
Okay, well, some of that's going to depend on what part of the trucking, transportation, delivery arena that you're going to be working. So, what is the niche? So,
Let's
you
say
mentioned
box truck.
Amazon.
Yeah.
So, well, and then Amazon has different.
Yes.
Are you doing home delivery? Are you doing line hauls between facilities? So if you're talking about tractor trailer power only using an Amazon trailer,
Okay.
then with that, a good margin. Well, first off, you don't get to make those decisions with Amazon. Amazon, you have your own authority. Amazon dictates the pricing that they're going to give.
Correct.
Secondly, unless you're in an area where Amazon is um, has multiple facilities like within each other, like the East Coast right here in the New York City metropolitan area,
Yep.
uh, there's not going to be enough freight to only do Amazon line
Correct.
hauls between because you might take because they do everything in one way in the way that they pay. So they how much freight you have on the truck, how many pallets or whatnot. They size it to the trailer or the equipment. They load the trailer, and you're going to go from a facility in Avondale, New Jersey to Binghamton, New York. You're dead once you get there. So there's no other Amazons in the area unless that facility has a load that happens to coincide with leaving there. So you're going to have other options besides Amazon.
Correct. And so my
So
whole thing with this, and pretty much what I was getting at for anyone who's not really following or doesn't understand my thought process, is that if you're working off of a limited margin in general, okay, and then you have to pay someone, but you also have the expenses of starting up the company, owning the truck, and all that good stuff. It just continues to cut into the margin. And so, someone, in my opinion, depending on how much capital that they have to start this, it might not be reasonable to put someone behind the wheel of their first truck that's not themselves.
only, well, in the case of like working for Amazon or some of the other companies who do similar dispatch by machine learning, power only, these kind of things, right?
Mhm.
Where they're setting the prices and things, so essentially dictating what the truck can make. I couldn't see unless you're well funded having the ability to profit off of just one truck, anything.
Yeah.
I'm thinking depending on if you're buying used equipment and it's used power,
Yeah.
your maintenance costs are going to be high. It can get you going, it can get money going, but it's not going to you're not going to make any margins for a while. So and that's one of those things. So if you're looking at it from that standpoint, you're going to think that every dime for that first truck that you that's not spent on maintenance, paying bills, those kind of things, is
Yep.
going to be looking to go into your next truck. So you want to make certain that you have some good equipment, that you're maintaining it well, so that it's minimizing the cost of the equipment in order to go into the next truck. And there's other options besides Amazon, for instance. Amazon makes it easy, but being able to get into some of those load boards or those captive brokers where they work with a lot of single truck owner operators, they're they have their each have their own app. It's possible to go through those. There's plenty of little dispatch companies out there that will help maintain those and look for those loads for you as you're out there working. Unless you're going to do that and that's what you're going to do while you're doing your other full-time job, you're trusting that driver to take loads. You're trusting that driver to make decisions about where that truck's going. So you're putting a lot of trust in that driver if you have full-time thing and you can't be doing it yourself.
Correct.
So just aware of that. There's other niches out there, but that's where you would start power only with your own authority. And you can find that. You can find that with some of them that run the rails as well.
Now,
Like Amazon, a lot of their stuff you might be doing the rails for Amazon, where you're taking their rail boxes from the railhead to a local facility, and if you do that, you can also then do the other rails that are doing those. JB Hunt, STG Logistics, CSX, or whoever some of the others are. You see them driving down the road. There's 53-foot rail boxes. So then you have multiple choices that you could work from, but you also then going to have multiple apps and multiple ways of invoicing and all these other things. So I don't think that having another full-time gig is a good way to get into that. If I would think that I would do something a little bit different that way if I'm going to do that for myself. If I was going to invest in that kind of thing, I'd be looking to maybe get a straight truck with the right box and configuration for maybe home delivery, and being able to put one or two and do that from a home delivery standpoint. That's different because then you contract a route or an area with that, whether it's furniture, whether it's parcel or whatnot, and then go into it that way. That way, when the truck goes with a driver to pick up a load, he has a route or an area that it's going to cover every day. Then the driver's not making choices. You're relying on Amazon to do that. So now that's probably the way I would do it if I want to be a little bit more hands off rather than trying to get into tractor trailer and doing power only.
and that's a great point, because we've talked about the different reasons why trust plays such a huge role in the asset side of the business in the past. And I think when it comes down to starting a trucking company, as you've pretty much just pointed out, there are more than one way to do so. You don't have to enter one specific way. You don't have to take on one specific type of business. And when you talk with an experienced professional, you can sort of front load what some of those expectations are and what's going to work specifically to the owner's situation. We talk about some of the
Did we just lose my camera?
Potentially, yes. Yeah, your head is still in the same spot. I'm realizing it hasn't moved.
Well, as long as my head's still in the same spot, we still see me.
It is.
I don't know that I'm working with a new camera. I can't remember if I used this one last week or not. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I got quite a little bit going on here with my change and my relocation. So I've got a new setup this morning with my desk and where I'm at. So, and I still got some more things to buy apparently. This camera may not be the one that I need, and I haven't rated it yet, but I was going to review it. But wow,
you haven't flinched a bit, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's not necessarily. I can see myself over there, so we're just kind of stuck at that point unless we start back out. But I wanted to say that. The first thing you do whenever you decide to start and run a business, besides making certain that the planning that it takes to get the money to get there, is the research into how that is going to operate. So, and that niche that you're going to be in. So research is, and market research is paramount. So now if you're already in the industry and you happen to be working for somebody else, then you kind of already know what your niche is. So, I think starting from the outside and then decide that you're going to get into trucking no matter what portion that it is, home delivery or drayage from the rails, from the seaport drayage, they're different, right?
Mhm.
Or dry van, reefer, tanker, wherever you're going to go within in any of the niches. I think that your experience should help guide that, but then you need to research. We all need to research as much as possible into the area we want to go, particularly depending on how much effort that you want to put into it, into that business. So if you're looking to do it because you have a full-time job elsewhere, how does that full-time job affect your ability to react to your other side business? Or do you truly trust the person that you've hired to operate that equipment for you, or
Mhm.
people? Because if you're doing furniture, home deliveries, furniture, or if you're doing relocation services, right? Local relocation services, then you might have more than one person that's doing that
Yeah.
in that truck.
Yeah.
So, and sometimes two or three relocation services if you're doing furniture installations for one of the large furniture companies, or maybe you're doing backyard furniture installation and setup. You need to have experienced people who are doing all that if it's not going to be you, and you need to trust your lead person that you're going to put there to make that decision. Now, each one of those areas brings different, you know, requirements, right? To be able to do so. If you're going to get into an area that requires more than one person, you're going to have helpers. You're going to have driver. You might have somebody else that might be the helper, might be the one who understands but doesn't actually drive.
Yep.
But they do some of the heavy lifting, and because they're more familiar with the assembly of the furniture or whatnot. Uh, there's all kinds of different ways to do, but research is paramount to making certain that you truly understand what it takes in every aspect. You have your own authority, you have your own compliance issues with FMCSA. So now with the FMCSA, some of the requirements are the drug and alcohol screening for the drivers, making certain that they are properly licensed, making certain you have the proper insurances. There's you want to make certain that you understand the entire thing as you come into. So research and your business plan are paramount
Yep.
in doing that. Is particularly when you're working in trucking, can be slim margins. Depending on what your operating ratio might be in the beginning, you're going to want to grow it. Everybody's hoping that they're going to make 10, 15, 20%. You don't do that in trucking. It's just not a well-ran business. Maybe a well-ran business can get to an operating ratio of 15 or a 15% gross margin type scenario. Maybe they can get to 90. The LTL margins tend to be slim, 3 to 5%, and a good company, 7%. Dry van, general freight tends to be in that same arena. You can get that wider margins in flatbed because it's more the people it's more specialized. Heavy equipment is a lot larger margins because it's even more specialized.
Yeah.
Reefer, tanker. So depending on where you want to be, it's difficult to say out of the box that you're going to be able to attain a 10% ROI, right? When you're sitting outside, it's going to take a while to get there. It's going to take some very good planning and some very good operations plan. Also, making certain that you're prepared to maintain that equipment on a regular basis because it could quickly add up. So you don't want to start with something, a 10-year-old piece of equipment, and thinking that you're going to go jumping right into a 10% operating ratio out of the box, because that equipment's going to have issues. And every time that equipment has issues, it can cost thousands of dollars. It's not going to be cheap. You can't repair it for hundreds of dollars. A new tire is $300. A recap is $175. Now, every tractor, a tandem axle tractor has 10 tires on there, 2 steering tires, which are different from the drive tires, and the cost of those, each one, you can easily exceed, $3,000 for a set of new tires, drive tires. So then at the same time, if a radiator goes in an old piece of equipment, that's going to be another 2,000 to 3,000 turbo. All these things. So we're not talking about. It's much easier at $500 to do maintenance and making certain that everything is good than what it is
Yeah.
to have to actually do a repair. So
Yeah.
you want to, if you don't know the equipment, then you want to make certain that you understand what you're buying. Then when you buy the new stuff, it can cost 100 to $125,000 to get a year, 2 year old or new equipment, depending on the configuration. And then
Yeah.
you're going to have the payment. That payment's going to be running you $1,500 to $2,000 a month, depending on what your credit is. So there's so many things in your research and planning to get there in order to figure out exactly where you want to be. So if you have an understanding, then you can work with somebody that can help you plan that. Somebody, I say like me, that can help you understand where it's going to go and how much money you need in each category in order to be able to get to your point of even starting up. Because
Yeah.
then you got to understand your legal structures,
Yeah.
your registration, your insurance, and getting into all those different things that you need.
Yeah.
From the legal structure and registration of the company, then jumping right into your licensing and permitting.
Yeah.
It's there's so many things to get there. So making certain that we understand that we can't just jump in with both feet. The easiest way to jump in with both feet is to be a driver yourself, sign on to another company, get your feet wet with operating and get the equipment, then
Yeah.
put a little more money back, making certain that you have some essentially what would be driver wages that's supporting you as you
Yeah.
drive the truck, and that you're figuring that out, and then plan to have your insurances and your regulations, licensing, permit, at a time down the line. Give yourself a year or so doing it that way in order to have an
Yeah.
understanding, and then be able to take that money and invest into that. Now, once you do that, then you're probably not going to be working for that company, so you need to know where you're going to go after that. So just a lot of different little things.
So you've
I'll
brought
slow
up a lot of
down.
very no, it's so far you brought up a lot of really good points because as someone who has started a business on my own and jumped in both feet, I've made mistakes. And so when I want when I'm having these conversations with people, I want them to understand the different pieces that go into it that they might not consider because they simply don't know. This is the important part about connecting with advisors that understand the industry, the businesses you're trying to break into. Um, and so for me, um, and you see them on Instagram and social media a lot. Companies that will say, we can start your LLC for you. We can, help you finance the truck, and we're a brokerage, so we'll give you loads. Um, but there's still so much to consider for that. And the one person that I was speaking to, the percentage that they were looking at, this person has great credit. It was just so high, and I was not convinced that they would get the same support from this company that I don't know anything about, because they pretty much they sell trucks. They have the in-house brokerage and they start the LLC. But I'm like, I know as an industry professional, having worked in the office side of things, that there's a lot of compliance that goes into it. And that's usually, Bob's field of exploration. But I'm not necessarily sure that all these companies that are claiming that they can help you get started are the great way to go, because if they don't have the experience with the compliance, you also don't know what type of freight they're actually moving, or what type of loads they'll be able to offer you, because if the margins are just as low as Amazon, I don't really think that it's much of a help. And you don't know that they're going to actually guide you through, because they want you to buy the truck essentially. And I guess it's like a conflict of interest is my underlying concern. There is, they want you to buy the truck, they want you to finance it through them, they want you to move your cargo through them, which okay. But like I said, I just don't know that they have the owner's best interests involved.
Okay, so I think there are a couple of things that you're talking about there. Not all of those companies that you're mentioning are all necessarily brokers. They do that.
Correct.
They don't make, and some of them they have these lease. Some of the trucking companies, the larger ones, have lease purchase programs, to
Okay.
where drivers can come in and lease the equipment and then drive it for them. Now, there's most of those lease purchase programs are restrictive to the operating authority of where there's been a lot of lawsuits over the last 10 years or so with some of these companies, and where the drivers are coming back and saying that the way they were treated was more like an employee. They do a lease purchase program, and then they get a statement that comes back where where it shows that they actually owe the company money, because they take out all these expenses for the fuel and everything else, and they're just not paying enough. And what it is that these people that did these lease purchase programs, the driver, the owner, or the soon to be owner, if they're working right, they don't know enough about how to operate that truck in order to understand how to make the profit. And so
Yep.
they think that this company has their best interest, or some kind of at
Correct.
least balance of best interest, between the two in there. And they don't always, and it doesn't work out for everybody. At the same
Correct.
time, not everybody's meant to be an owner operator. Because they just don't put the effort in, and they think that they ain't going to do anything because the company's doing it for them. So when they
Yep.
fail, they blame the company. So I mean, it
Yeah.
goes both ways. Bad companies, also bad people,
It's
or
balanced
people
like
that are not
everything
putting
else.
the effort. Yeah,
You
yeah.
got to
There's
fight.
balance in there. So what if you truly uh, earnest about being an entrepreneur and starting your own business, then you really, no matter what that business is, the research and planning before you kickstart is paramount. And I can't. I can't reiterate that enough. That research and planning. You can't just go wantonly go out and start businesses, because then you end up like me, and you have a bunch of failed businesses over the
Fair
years,
enough, Bob.
and
Me
and
too.
and maybe you become an expert in something, but here you are still, struggling to run your own business, and where, if I'd had done things right 10 years ago, where would I be today, right? So well, no, I think it's
But you
great. My
still
experience is
had the
great.
boldness to start. See, so it's like you still had the boldness to start. You learned a ton,
Uh,
and now we're here talking about it. But
we're
this is
gonna
why we
fail.
have these.
That's what I'm trying to get at. So
Absolutely. And this is why we have these conversations, because the thing is that, I mean, what is I don't know what the ratio is, but how many small businesses fail within their first year of opening? It's a very high percentage. And so the way to shrink those percentages is to give small businesses resources to help them do that research, to help them understand more deeply what they're trying to get involved in. Just be, there's an avenue for everyone. I promise you. We just have to understand why you're starting the business, what you're looking to get, what your path is, what your growth trajectory is, and all that, and make it make sense, essentially. And there are ways to do that, as long as we can have these conversations and connect people to the resources that they need to be successful. Because at the end of the day, small businesses, it's a huge part of our economy, especially trucking when it comes to shipping. And so I want to see more and more businesses become successful. And so by learning from our own mistakes and pointing out what we've seen in the past and connecting entrepreneurs to the resources that they need, I think we can sort of shrink that curve of failure, or so to speak, I guess. And so that's the biggest takeaway that I have, for this conversation today, is that it's a learning experience, and um and forecasting, just, or front loading, I should say, trying to figure out what could potentially come of the venture. And so one thing I also wanted to talk with you about, Bob, is financing.
oh,
Yeah.
that's something I can help you with.
Yeah. So one thing I will say is, I don't really know much about financing a truck. I know, as you mentioned, depending on the age of the vehicle, you could be looking at a six-figure investment. Obviously, you have maintenance costs and all that to consider. What what do, I heard a percentage for this person that has great credit. It was like upwards of 35%.
Oh,
Is that
nowadays,
normal? Is that
yeah, it
normal?
can be. Well, you know, there's a particularly if they're not in business. You know, if they've been in business 3 to 6 months, it'd be a little bit easier. If you have 3 months of bank statements and you can see cash flow, then it's better understanding of where it's going in there. But if you have if your business isn't off the ground and you're trying to look for, yeah, it's going to go. I've seen quotes come in for some people that, you know, short term, you know, have very high percentages, even you know, closer to 50% by the time you're done. You know, so you borrow $100,000 and you pay back over for a 12-month window, and you pay back 150 plus. You know, what are you looking at there? So
Holy
and
moly.
that can happen, particularly the shorter the term. So
Wow.
operating capital, lines of credit tend to have a little bit higher margins on there because people take a little bit and then put it back, and they don't make as much. So then the percentage that on what does uh, carry over goes a little bit higher. So, you know, I would say that trying to get financing out of the box, unless it's for equipment and you have history and you have good credit. Now, if you have good credit and you have history in trucking, it's not new, and you're going to buy a tractor, there's something to be said for that. You could probably get normal terms nowadays are in that 15% range,
Okay.
give or take, depending on the credit history. So,
How would you
as long as
define
you
good
have a
credit?
plan and who you're going to be finance or leased to, or you have your own authority plan already in place, then that financings is better that way. That if you can wait for 3 months, it might even be better. You know, for
Let me
equipment.
ask you a question. What in your expert opinion, or what do you think is what would you consider a good credit score? So that way the audience has an understanding of what range we're talking about.
Oh well, okay. In order to get the better the better interest rates, I'm going to say, you know, above 700
Okay.
minimum to get the better rates. Below that, so if you're above 750, even better.
Okay.
You know, and that takes a
That's what
lot
I
of work
thought
to
too.
get above 750. So
Yeah,
but
that's
700 is about that line where you're really going to start, you know, where your rates can start coming down. You have a credit score of 700, you have some years of experience, you know, some years of experience at 2 or 3 whatever in the industry, as a you know, driving a truck for somebody else, right? And that's where you work. Then you could probably get a little bit better interest rates off of that, you know, by being
wow.
above that 700. So it's also going to help your and I know it may not using your credit to get your interest rate down, but it can improve along those lines depending on what company you're with. It can also save you money in your insurance having a higher credit score. I
Interesting.
you know, to me, credit score and how you manage your credit is of paramount importance in today's world. So, you know, there's ways to use your credit to your advantage. Having that score to can help save you a lot of money, even with some of the higher rates, depending on what you're doing. So you can turn some things a little faster. But having that credit can give you so many options, you know, to you know. So I recommend everybody work on their credit and try to keep it above 700 at all costs.
Awesome.
You know, and so, but you're going to find the fly by nights. They're going to be willing to give investment companies that are willing to give money to anybody for the interest rate that's out there. So no
Yeah.
different than the buy here, pay here places, whether
Yeah.
it's furniture, cars, or whatever that are. What are they? Uh, yeah, the people and companies that take advantage of other people that aren't doing so well with their credit, or you know, have been struggling financially.
Yeah.
You're always going to find those succubuses.
And that's honestly was the biggest red flag. So this person that I was speaking to specifically, they have a credit score 750 and above. And
Wow.
they said that yeah, that they were quoted 35%. And he said when the person was speaking to him, this is when he decided that he didn't want to be involved with this business anymore, is because they were speaking to him as if his credit score wasn't high enough, that it wasn't good enough. And I said to him, I said, honestly, my takeaway from that is her script, whoever was having this conversation with you, is probably used to dealing with people who are struggling in the credit area. And so when she saw your credit score, she was probably not sure how to have the conversation outside of that. And I said, which should also be a red flag, because my thing is it points back to, do they have your best interests at heart? 35% is it's a steep percentage, and so it makes me question the integrity of that business.
Was this a secure line by equipment?
I honestly, I'm not
Or
sure, but
okay,
I'll
well,
be
see, 'cause
connecting
that
you
could
with
be
this
the
person
difference
because
in
we'll
those
find
kind
out.
of things. So
Yeah, which is also other things to talk about too. But he just felt like the representative was just being very demeaning to him, and it just made me wonder, like, is this the type of company that's taking advantage of people? Um, because it just didn't seem very nice at all. Um, and so when it comes down to, you mentioned something before. My brother just texted me. He's a driver. I told him to join today, but he said he's going to be driving. Luckily, it'll always be here so he can look back. But he, there was something else that you brought up in terms of, so we talked about credit, which I think is super, super important. As you said, there's a lot of different ways, even though it's not necessarily, it might not be the avenue that one wants to take when starting a business. It certainly helps if you have a good credit score. Um,
yes.
let's say, so you mentioned that first 3 months, if you can wait 3 months. Are there any suggestions that you can make for people who are just starting up their business, getting through those 3 months? How can they start to generate some income? Um, I guess, what are some ways that they can generate income for their business to help um, create that history in those starting months, if any, outside of actually.
Are we keeping it particular to trucking, or is this just a broad in business question?
Let's
People,
keep it
entrepreneur,
particular to trucking. Let's keep it
particular to
specific to
trucking.
trucking.
So if
Yeah.
you're going to be that owner operator, right, where then you can probably do it with your off of your experience and your credit. You should be able to finance the equipment so long as you have a plan. If you're going to get your own DOT authority, your MC number, your motor carrier license, uh, if you're going to do that, you should have some history of working in trucking, and then your credit, right? So then you could probably do that without the 3 months because it's secured by the equipment, right? So if you're
Oh, I see what
planning
you're
on
saying.
not and that's the thing. So if you're financing equipment, then you probably don't need that 3 months. If you were to be
Mm,
starting in trucking and you're saying starting the business of becoming a freight broker, that's going to be a little bit different than how you do that. If you're going to become what they call a contract dispatcher, where they're neither a broker but they also don't have their own authority. They're essentially working for a bunch of individual, and we have those nowadays, where one person might be able to handle 10 individual owner operators with their own authority, right?
well, yeah,
So, and then they
yeah.
find the loads, they do the invoicing, the finance and everything in the background for somebody. They just don't have the broker license because now they're going to be working. Each truck has its own separate authority where that's maintained by the owner of the truck. He takes that and he works the load boards to find loads for that truck, and then he dispatches those trucks out there. Or it could be that there's a driver in those trucks, but somebody else owns the equipment, has the authority, like what we were talking about when you first started. But
Yep.
then you're trusting that the dispatcher that you're hiring to maintain that will see those books. Now, if you're in a scenario like that or some mixture thereof, where you're owning the equipment, you can get there. Now, if you're looking at a line of credit, operating credit, after you buy the truck, the struggle to get to being able to get one of those credit lines like that after 3 months is, yeah, that I would suggest that that's where it comes in. When I talked back at the beginning, the research and planning, making certain you have funding in your
Yep.
pocket to go out there. Now, because here's the thing, if
Okay.
you can show that you have money in the bank, reserves that's meant particularly for you to live while your startup is going, and you can
Mhm.
show that, you should be able to get that credit line down. You have cash in the bank, but you don't necessarily want to use it. You don't want to go pay in that credit if you have cash in the bank. You don't want to go getting some loan that's going to cost you 35% out of the box. But having that cash in the bank might be able to get your investments, not necessarily cash, might be able to get you that interest down a little bit by showing that you have this, but it doesn't make sense for me to take money out of an investment that's gaining me 12% on average a year in order to pay down a loan that's only going to cost me 6%. But now,
Mhm. We
if
call that
you can,
leverage.
yes. But then now, if you're looking at having to pay that 35% and you're only gaining 12%, it'd be better to use your own money and then figure out a balance between the two. And so, I mean, there's so many options. You kind of got to bring it down to the individual and where they're at, so
Yep.
that you have the right
Yep.
terms. And then the thing about business consultants or commercial business advisors like you, depending on what niche that we work in. Uh,
Mhm.
and my background, besides being the CEO of HTG, which is a freight brokerage,
Mhm.
is that I've been a consultant for about 15 years in the owner operator startup type trucking company. So I've been doing this startup things for trucking companies and helping them with all aspects, from the planning all the way through to beginning operations, and making certain that after operations begin that they're staying in compliance. I've been doing this now for 15 years or so. So in
Yep.
various aspects, so where as a consultant, where I'm licensed in insurance, but I don't directly sell insurance to people because I think that would be an ethical thing. I considered it, but owning an insurance agency and being able to be have some ethics in there and say, okay, my agency doesn't have what you need because of your position, so I'm looking over here and I'm going to get this. That's the way I kind of look at things.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so it's like being able to separate yourself and put yourself into different
Yep.
as you bring. So you want to make certain that the people you're working with are ethical, and that they
Absolutely.
have some character built up over years. And that's something that's, to me, as a consultant, is one of the most important things I can have, is that character that
Yep.
says that I'm going to be honest and I'm going to always do the ethical thing, which is for my client, right? So
Absolutely.
if I'm charging a client fees to be a consultant, I never would put them into my insurance agency, right? So along that line, that's because it wouldn't be ethical for me to do. Now, if somebody comes to me looking for insurance, I'll sell them the insurance, and then
Yep.
typically the consulting would come along and I can give them some advice for free while we're doing that, within limits, of course.
Yep.
So it's about finding where you fit with each client and what they're coming to me for. And I like the idea of working with individual owner operators in the consulting arena, where I help them get off the ground, and it can take a while before I even get paid. I'm not going to do one piece where I help somebody establish their licensing, setting up the legal structure of the company, and charge them for doing those things, because I find that unethical. And but I mean, if that's all I'm doing, if that's the only piece they want from me, then I'm going to charge them for that, because I got to make some money some way. But if I'm going to
Yep.
run them through the entire thing, they're going to need to put me on some kind of a monthly subscription basis. And I used to do that, where I would give all that advice and help them through all the struggle, and right down to their finances, right through the preparation of their taxes at the end of the year,
Yep.
and how to maintain and manage that entire process. Uh, and 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 I did that on a monthly subscription basis. So, and I can still do that still today. And I'm known to do that that way. They're paying me for my time. I give them that hour or so a month after we get them to a point. We start out how much ever time it takes, and then we work there. Now here I am selling my services. That's not what we're supposed to be on here today
No, but you bring up a
about.
really good point because we're talking about ethics, morals, and values, right? And everything that we do, this is how we set ourselves apart because admittedly, and we've brought it up with the liars, cheats, and thieves whole part through last week's conversation, but I think you can find those kinds of people in multiple areas of the business. I find that, I mean, even people that I've worked with where I know that I hold myself to a bit of a higher standard than they do. And I can tell almost instantly, depending on the conversation that we're having, that this person is a bit shady. And so when you're entering an industry where it's hard to navigate and figure out who has your best interest at heart, these are some of the ways that you're going to figure it out, or that people are going to figure out what they need to look for in the team of people that they're bringing together to make this business come to life for them. And so yes, I think morals, ethics, and values plays a huge role in that process. Because as we've said multiple times, you know, and actually maybe not even, I probably haven't even said it yet, but the people that you have around you when you're starting your business, the people that you bring into your business, there's like, it's like a next level of appreciation for them because when you can trust them with your business is essentially a livelihood. You know, you're bringing in income, you're trying to, whatever it is that, for whatever reason you're starting this business, it's important to you. So when you find people that you could trust with your business, it just, to me, it's like I said, next level of appreciation. It's just like, those are my people right there because we're taking care of this thing together and it's awesome. And sometimes you just don't have that straight away.
Well,
Um,
so and you know, along those lines, and you and I working together, uh,
yeah,
and among others in our each of our networks, that's kind of where the idea, when I started HTG, I wrote a business plan, which kind
yeah,
of almost immediately was out the window because it was a business plan for a freight brokerage, and I was like, well. The question is how is my freight brokerage different from everybody else's freight brokerage, right? And and I said, well, okay, so because we're going to focus in dray, drayage, and then we're going to become an NVOCC as soon as I can, and then we're going to just door to door service anywhere in the world, and I, and then we start working that aspect, and then we're like, but that's not really what we're here to do, right? So the real idea behind the scenes that we're talking about, so we was completely different than the business plan. So we scrapped it earlier this year, and I've never finished it back into where it is because the idea behind HTG is a much bigger picture. It's about having a picture of who we are as a society, and then that supply chain management and everything that goes into supply chain management is something that we can all do individually and be a part of. But at the same time, how do we collaborate? How do we know that the people we're working with are trustworthy? How do we know that, how do we find all the other businesses that do something on the outskirts of supply chain management to anywhere in the world? How do we maintain a small business attitude at HTG as we grow and the revenue grows? And so the idea behind HTG then comes from, well, my experience as a consultant. So as a consultant with RL Jarrett for 15 years, and I've been working with small businesses that all do some aspect of trucking, whether it's road service, whether it's the truckers themselves, whether it's some insurance that's providing some kind of outside service in small businesses to help workers' comp insurance and keep those costs down. So whether it's freight brokers, independent agents, dispatchers, the reason I know so much about all these different little niches is because I've worked with people over the last 15 years that I needed to help them, and so I would do the research in order to help guide them through their process, and then they didn't have to relearn things. So that's what, and learning those things and understanding and being able to provide better service is why I was able to write the 12 steps to accounting program that I have, which I've never been able to publish in a book because I kind of adapt it to everybody individually and let them know and understand where that comes from. So being an insurance agent and licensed and everything helps me guide them. Being a financial advisor helps me guide them on the money. Being able to help them find funding helps me guide them and be a better. So now, as CEO of Hatchway, I want to bring together a bunch of people who work in the industry. We're all small businesses, and we can all sit down and collaborate and be better from the collective. So, in that
Well, before
collective is helping our local society. We're helping businesses grow, helping small businesses start, helping them grow in a network where we can all lean on each other. And that's what
well, let
makes
me
HTG different. So,
Well, let me ask
go
you
ahead.
this, right? Because we're talking about trust. And I think one of the final concepts that, because we're coming up on an hour, one of the final concepts I think that we do need to hone in on is trust. And I've had my own process over the years of figuring out how I trust people. And I always giggle a little bit to myself when I see the posts on specifically LinkedIn, how interview process should not take like 6 to 12 months and 4 to 5 in-person interviews, and you should be able to tell immediately. And I've been through some lengthy interview processes, not anything as crazy as some of the extremes that I've seen, but when I was working in the VP capacity at Shepherd Group, I had identified a way, pretty much a series of questions that I could use that I don't want to say is universal or that I use them all the time, but there are certain things that I look for in a conversation with people because I have a global network. The people that I meet with are not often are not always people that I meet in and around New Jersey. You know what I mean? So I have conversations with people from other countries all the time. And so how do I know that they're worth doing business with? How do I know that we can continue the conversation after one conversation? Um, and so, what are some tips that you can give, or what are a couple of ideas that you have that you use to build trust as you're building out your operational partners for HTG? What's I guess a couple of things that you look out for?
For me, you know, one of the things is the difference. You brought up that thing I like to say: liars, cheats, and thieves. Right? Liars, cheats, and thieves are always trying to sell you. They're always trying to talk you through something in order to try to get to a sell. So
Yeah,
those you can't collaborate with that. So the idea
that's true.
that you're able to have a real conversation back and forth where we can learn from each other, where we're asking questions of each other. That's where we can get into start building some trust. If
Yeah,
all you're doing is, and believe me, in my capacity over the years, I've been constantly somebody's trying to sell me something, and then those people, after I have one conversation telling them about who I am, I typically never hear from them again, and
yeah,
because I never buy anything or make a decision on a first trip. So, not when I go to buy a car, not when I go to buy, unless I know what I want and I actually ordered it, but if I was to go buy a car, I don't go and I'm not certain what I want. I would never walk in and buy something same day.
yeah,
I want to have a conversation. I want to know what it is. I want to know the person that I can trust on the other side. And the only way to get there is to have real conversations, real back and forth. So if I'm interviewing somebody, for me, I pretty much know within the first few minutes, if we can have a conversation that's back and forth, if they can speak strongly on the subject of what I'm looking to, the role I'm looking to fill. And so long
yep,
as, and here's the other thing is I expect, because a man of many hats that has his fingers in so many things, I'm not really an expert in anything, is the way I look at it. So I want somebody who truly knows and understands if I'm going to hire somebody in marketing, you better be able to sell me something and have an understanding and be able to take my vision and put it into something, even if it's not exactly what I envisioned, but come close to it. And that was what, when we met, that was that one thing is that within probably by the time you typed to me an email with an understanding of kind of where I was headed the moment after our first live interview. How long did it take? Because 30 minutes, are you done it in your car or something? Or when you got home? I don't know. It was pretty quick. And
from the DSL parking lot.
So, but you grasp what I was talking about, so I don't think that as a company, when I'm hiring somebody, when I'm looking to work with somebody, that it's all about me finding the right person to fill that role. It's also about me being able to get that person to buy into my vision. And so for me, it's different. And so as we can sit and work together, then I've been known to fire clients as well and say, I can't work with you because you're not understanding, you're not trustworthy, you're not you're not working with the advice. So, and if you don't want to do that, then take your money elsewhere. And that's it's important that we truly know and trust and have an understanding and that common goal. We don't have to have common lifestyles. We don't have to have the same background, ethnicity, or anything else. So long as we can see that one and come together on our goal of what's happening in the professional thing, and that we're working together and that we're learning and listening from each other, then to me, that's how I determine that. Are we on that path? Are we on that path together? Can we find a way to get on that path together? And that's
essentially, I think we're very aligned in that way. And honestly, I wouldn't have been able to put it so articulately, I guess, or I wouldn't have been able to articulate it that way, the way that you just did. But essentially, that's my process, trying to figure out, regardless of what, for me, sir, I've found that there are transferable skills no matter what industry you work for. I have my own set of transferable skills that I have been able to translate into different industries. And so I expect the same of other people too, especially when you have X amount of years of experience. And I love the phrase that, you're not starting from scratch, you're starting from experience. And so I always give people that time to, let's figure out what's transferable, what's not. Are you willing to invest a little bit of yourself into the vision? Because if you are, that is to me what changes the conversation. Because at the end of the day, small business comes to fruition from what you had in your mind a year ago, Bob, is what we're still bringing to light, today. And
it
it's
just happens to
changed.
be under a different brand, right?
Exactly. And so like a few things have changed, but that's okay because life changes, but being able to continue the conversation, roll with the punches, so to speak, pivot when necessary. I think you could see, and someone who's being honest and vulnerable about their experience, I'm always listening. You can tell when someone's being honest and when someone is vulnerable and they're willing to share, like, you know what? I've been doing this and it did not work out. And here are the reasons why I think it didn't work out. And I find that more and more that I have conversations that way, with you, with any of my peers, the more people are willing to say, it just didn't work out and it's time to start again, or I need to get back on this path. How can I get back up on the horse again? And to me, I guess that's dedication, so to speak, or even discipline. Because discipline in this industry, in any industry that you want to be successful in long term, you're going to fall off the horse. It's going to happen. But how quickly can you get back up?
That's true. That's that. Yeah, fall down, get back up. That's failing and starting again.
Yep.
And how many times do we fail? Well, sometimes we fail every day on some things.
That's
I
right.
have daily goals and I fail regularly. So you get so used to failing that it just becomes a normal thing. And then we're not so afraid of it. Right.
Yep.
So, I've failed with different businesses over the years. The one thing that since I left the corporate world in 2008, I've consistently kept RL Jarrett Holdings over the years, but I've tried different businesses under the holdings, right? And sometimes two or three at a time, sometimes with partners, and sometimes with. I failed at a freight brokerage before, and so then when starting up HTG, it became. You see, I was working with somebody, and we had things, and that's how we met, and as we come through and we started planning those things, basically we had a bit of a hiccup from the end of last year until we really got things off the ground in March. It was essentially almost a quarter, right? Right after the new year, we were slammed with this. Our partners or our financing didn't want to continue to finance our plan, so we had a major change, and I had to make decisions about using my money to do it, and so that's what I did, and I did it under the you know. And under the guise that I'm still doing the same thing, and I want to continue to do that. And my thing, as we go forward, is collaborating. And as we finish up here, I want to talk about this one thing we've talked about, Victoria, is that we want to expand this table between you and we want to add people. So
Yep.
how do we add a few more people to this conversation where they can put their voice out there as well? Not necessarily people that we're currently working with, but people from different aspects. Had
Absolutely.
our attendees here today. How can we get their voice in here and get that same into our collaboration, into this community that we want to continue building? So,
Yep.
can we do this in a different way where we can allow attendees to come in? So,
Yeah.
but approved by us, of course.
Of course. Yeah.
Okay.
If you're
So
interested in joining our round table on Wednesday, right now it's looking like a rectangle table, but we can change the shape. We can certainly change the shape. I was a little nervous because I have a meeting after this. I thought I booked it for 10 o'clock, but I gave myself a buffer, which is so good because our chats always run over. So I'm glad that I gave myself the buffer. So I'm good.
Well,
Um,
I'd sit here and talk all day. I tell that to people on the phone.
Like, you tell me when to stop because that's when I will. But it's, I think today has been, we touched upon a lot today. It was a lot of information. And anybody, if you have any questions, definitely feel free to send me a note. We're happy to help. And we will see you next week for
Yes.
continuing our chats. And again, if you're interested in joining, please, send me a note and we will we will move forward in our screening process to figure out how to get some more guests on here.
And I'm going to do my final note is I'm going to turn what we were talking about, basically outline the subject that
Hmm.
we're talking about is starting a trucking company, the research,
Yep.
the planning, legal structure, all the way down. And I'm going to turn it into some articles. First one will be
Good.
an outline of that. And then I'm going to go in depth into each area that I'm going to outline over the next few weeks so that anybody who's looking to get into trucking and start a trucking company, well, actually, almost any business because we can apply it there. I'm going to
Yep.
outline those things and how we can get there and develop first off the roadmap that can take winds and turns and flows any which way, and then some detail later. So we'll start there. So
Awesome.
and put a line
Very
of fire under myself. So.
awesome. Well, that sounds good. Those are resources our clients can use for sure. And so I'm happy to see those see people request those and be able to share them with our clients. So thank you again so much for always being willing to share your expertise, and we shall chat again soon.
All right, fantastic. Thank you for giving
You're
me the
very
platform.
welcome. Of course. Bye bye.
All right, have a good day, everybody.